I want to talk about the story of Sarah and Abraham. Y'all remember when God told Abraham that he would make him a great nation, and from him all the families of the earth would be blessed? Y'all remember that? That's back in Genesis 12. And this promise probably didn't make sense to Abraham at the time because him and Sarah had no children. And well into their senior years. They thought they were just too old. See, when God tells us our promises like Jeremiah 29:11, we don't believe it. Because we look at our lives and we be like, oh, no, it ain't finna happen. Ain't no way. You know. But in chapter 16, Sarah still hadn't had a child yet. And she was reflecting on what God had promised them. So she took matters into her own hands and decided that Abraham should sleep with her maid, Hagar. Abraham and Hagar had a son named Ishmael, remember? And God allowed it, but he did not ordain it. See, you must be mindful that when it comes to the promises of God, you shouldn't take matters into your own hands. In chapter 18, God made Abraham and Sarah a specific promise, one that didn't make sense. The odds were against them because of their age. Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90 years old. And by the time it had been 13 years since God made his original promise back in chapter 12. And here we are on chapter 18. And they had seen no signs of their earlier promises. They seen none. See, God moves in his time, not our time. What do you do when you've waited so long and somebody is telling you that the impossible is still possible? What do you do? What do you do when the promise just doesn't make sense? So you've got to decide in your heart not to give in to that doubt. You got to hold on strong to your faith. I know that's easier said than done. I've had to learn the hard way myself that doubting hinders the progress to your promise. It paralyzes you. And it keeps you stagnant when your faith isn't strong and when you're not trusting in God. It makes you want to take control rather than to trust God with your life. And how many of y'all do that? We all do that. We all go through that, right? However, when you replace doubt with faith, you give God something to work with. Okay? It's easy to be skeptical when the odds are against you. But I encourage you to trust God to keep his word. When you replace doubt with faith, trust that God will do his part and release the blessings. You have to believe that there is absolutely nothing too hard for God to do. See, my purpose is to encourage the encourager today. And that's what I hope I did with y'all. See, while you focus on the needs of those around you, remember that God has not forgotten about you. He hears your prayers and he remembers your heart desires and struggles. Just like he posed that question to Abraham in Genesis 18:14. Is anything too hard for the Lord? That's what he asked Abraham. And the answer is that there is absolutely nothing too hard for God. Ephesians 3:20 says that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. And that's our faith, y'all. So there is nothing you could think of or ask that God cannot do. Just keep your faith. Keep your trust in him. Now, when you were faced with the impossibility, how did you handle it? How did you handle it? And then after knowing what I've just stated, How would you handle it going forward? Something to think about. And then, what have you gained about faith from this conversation we're just having? What have you gained from it? What areas have you discovered where you are strong in faith? What areas have you discovered where your faith needs to be strengthened?